It's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. A document, lost for almost a century, uncovers the truth behind one of man's great mysteries. The loch isn't empty. Whatever waits beneath it has been watching for decades. We found what really lurks in Loch Ness, by Margot Holloway. Prologue. I found it in a dusty archive room, shoved behind boxes no one had opened in decades. It was a leather-bound journal, the yellow pages stiff with age, the edges frayed as if it had been handled frequently but carefully, then hidden there for God knows how long. The handwriting was cramped and precise, every word etched like it mattered, because, I guess, for the writer it did. At first it reads like any ordinary fishing log. Dates, nets, weather, small towns tucked against a loch. But you don't keep reading for the weather. You keep reading because, well, something is off. A tension under the words, the kind that creeps into your chest without warning. The routine that should be mundane becomes a countdown. The ordinary turns uneasy. Something is there watching, waiting, and it doesn't belong to the rules we know. I'm not someone who scares easy. I don't chase myths, legends, or loch monsters, and yet, flipping through these pages, I felt that tightening in my gut, that one feeling that comes before you realize something is really wrong. The author, a Scottish fisherman named Hamish MacLeod, never overplays it. He doesn't embellish. No, the fear, confusion, and uncertainty he felt, they're all laid out flat, matter of fact, but clear enough to cut through the veneer of normal life. I can't tell you if this is true. Maybe it's the imagination of a young man who spent too much time out on the dark water. Maybe it's just a fever dream penned in ink. But the more I read here, the less certain I felt that it's imagination at all. Something in these words lingers. Something unsaid in the spaces between the sentences, in the silences he notes, in the way he charts the water as if it were alive. Now, I won't spoil what comes next. I won't even pretend to fully understand it. But if you choose to read further, understand this. The loch is not all as it seems, and the deeper you go into this account, the more the air around you will feel stifling. The night will pull in longer, and the shadows will be less forgiving. So continue at your own discretion. Some things, once you know they're there, refuse to be unseen. Part 1. I think of the winter of 1937 as the year the loch stopped behaving like something I knew. Name's Hamish MacLeod. I was 23 then, the youngest body on our boat, the Maori Bay. We worked out of a tight little village on the west side of Loch Ness, stone houses squatting close to the water like they'd edged there inch by inch over the generations. The older men had spent their whole lives on that loch. To them it wasn't anything as fanciful as a puzzle or a legend. It was just a workplace, a stretch of water that paid out generously if you treated it right. And by that winter, I felt as though I'd mapped it out in my bones. Every bend, every shallow bite of shoreline, every place the wind behaved differently. But that night proved how wrong that kind of confidence can be. We were going to set off a little later than usual. The sky felt like it was sealed shut. No stars, no moon, just a low lid of cloud pressing down. The cold clung to the air, wet and heavy like fog. Wind ran the length of the loch. Not that hard, just relentless, wrinkling the surface into long scars and dragging the smell of soaked earth and peat across the water. Well, there were 4 of us in all. Alistair McGregor captained the boat. Big shoulders, beard gone, mostly iron grey. He wasn't one to waste words, and he never rushed. I'd never seen him fumble a tool or even raise his voice. He trusted habit the way other men trust prayer, and he didn't like anyone messing with it. Stuart stood beside him, my cousin, 5 years older, already carrying himself like a man worn thin at the edges. Fine lines had set in around his eyes early. He'd married that spring, and his wife was pregnant. Since then he'd turned careful in a way that showed. He watched the sky like it might betray him, and checked every knot as if his future was tied into it. Then there was Duncan. Yeah, a big dunk to everyone who knew him. He filled the space around him with noise, always talking, always laughing first. He'd come to us a year earlier after walking off a trawler on the east coast. Constantly complained that the loch was boring compared to the open sea, though he never said that when Alistair could hear. We left the jetty just after sundown. The water near shore clicked softly against the stones. The Maori Bay rocked as we climbed aboard, ropes complaining under their breath while Alistair cast off. I took my spot near the bow and pulled my coat tight. Stuart went straight to the nets, running his hands over lines and floats. Duncan hovered near the stern, fiddling with the lantern. "Hey, mind that wick," Alistair said, quiet but firm. "I want it steady. We'll need the light." Duncan adjusted it until the flame stopped dancing and settled into a dull, even burn. It barely pushed back the dark, but it was enough to see the deck and each other's faces. We headed out toward deeper water, where the loch narrowed and the hills crowded in. The old fishermen were fond of that stretch in the winter months. Fish followed the colder channels there. If you laid your nets right, the night could still pay for itself handsomely. The engine thumped underfoot, slow and regular, like a pulse you could feel through your boots. It blended with the slap of water against the hull. And behind us the village lights thinned to a weak smear, then vanished as we slipped past a dark shoulder of land. None of us spoke, although silence out there wasn't empty. No, it was controlled. It let certain sounds through while swallowing the rest. Metal shifting, the engine coughing, wooden decks scuffed by boots. Voices only came out when they had the job to do. Over the black water, words felt like they could travel too far, perhaps reach places they shouldn't. After a while, Alistair leaned forward, squinting into the dark. I followed his line of sight. The hills rose on both sides, nothing but bulk and suggestion against the sky. The water looked heavier here, darker, as if it had thickened. The lantern showed only the nearest ripples, and past that was a flat black sheet that gave away nothing. "Right here," Alistair said. "We'll set the first line." He killed the engine, and the Maori Bay drifted. Without the motor, the loch spoke up. Water slapped the hull, and somewhere along the shore an owl called, once, twice, and then went quiet. Stuart and I moved to the nets. He checked the floats while I worked the coil loose. Duncan took up the gaff, ready to guide the gear over the side. Alistair stayed at the tiller, his eyes moving between the water and the shape of the hills. "A wee bit cold for November," Stuart muttered, and I nodded. My fingers burned inside my gloves. There was a deadness under the wind that made my skin crawl. We fed the first net into the water. The floats jumped once in the lantern glow and then slid away into the dark as the line paid out, swallowed by the loch without a sound. Then the net vanished into the black without so much as a sound. No splash, no protest. I watched the last cork float slide out of the lantern's reach and get eaten by the dark. "Right there," Alistair said. "We'll swing back in an hour." The engine kicked over again and we pushed on, lining up for the next drop. Familiar motion settled me down. Drop the net, fix the mark, move ahead. Same steps night after night. The work was a long loop you could hide inside. But then, something went wrong. The water at the bow started acting thick, like it had weight in it. The waves didn't break clean anymore. No, they dragged themselves along. The Maori Bay felt sluggish, as if something below was gripping her keel. Now, the engine kept the same pitch, but the hull fought harder to move. "Hey, do you feel that?" I said. Stuart looked up, a rope draped through his hands. "Feel what?" "The pull," I said. "Right under us." He braced a palm against the side and waited. His face tightened. "Yeah, the water's off," he said. "Must be some kind of current." Alistair caught the exchange and glanced back. There's a trench under this run, he said. Bottom drops fast. Water does strange things along the edges. Eyes on the net, all of yous. That was the end of it. But still, Stuart's grip didn't relax. His fingers stayed white on the line. We set the second net close to the first and fixed the marker. Duncan cracked a joke about fish being too stiff with cold to bother moving, but it landed flat. He kept peering over the side, his eyes following the restless skin of the loch. As we moved on, the lantern picked up a smear of mist skimming the surface ahead. Now, this wasn't a proper fog, nothing thick or rolling. No, this was thin, low, and a bit too stubborn, clinging tight to the water. When I leaned forward, I saw it stayed just ahead of the bow, always just out of reach. Behind us, the water looked cleaner, almost normal. Well, I didn't say anything. In that kind of dark, doubt came easy. Alistair had us lay 2 more nets along the trench, and by then the village might as well never have existed. The hill swallowed everything behind us. All that remained was the boat, the water, and the vague black rise of land pressing in from both sides. The sky stayed sealed shut, cloud stacked on cloud. We cut the engine and let the boat drift. The silence closed around us again. Small waves kissed the hull. Loose metal rattled softly on deck. The lantern burned steady, a sick yellow circle that caught our faces and left the rest of the loch untouched. Duncan rubbed his hands and stomped his feet. "I should have stayed on the East Coast trawlers," he said. "At least the sea knows how to move. This place feels half dead." "Hey, watch more, talk less," Alistair said. And Big Dunk smiled, but the emotion never really reached his eyes. He kept flicking looks between the water and Alistair's back. I leaned on the rail and tried to read the surface. I'd grown up on this loch. My father had me in boats before my memory even starts. Even so, I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing now. The waves didn't follow a pattern. Smooth patches spread out, ringed by rougher water that gathered and then broke apart again. Not like the surface you get when something big moves underneath. Well, that thought settled hard in my chest, and I didn't care to share it. And then the sound came. At first, it blended in, low, almost nothing. I only caught it because it didn't belong. It didn't follow wind or water. It had its own timing, a deep, heavy beat, then a pause, then another. For a moment I thought it was the engine echoing somehow, even though it was dead quiet. "Hey, do you hear that?" I said. All 3 heads turned. The noise came again, a dull thump once more, felt rather than heard, rising from somewhere below us. It was not the hull, not the shore. It repeated unevenly, the gaps between beats never quite the same. That's not the boat," Stuart said, and his voice shook despite himself. Alistair stepped to the rail and leaned over. His eyes had narrowed now, listening hard to the water beneath our feet. He stayed bent over the rail for a long beat, listening like the water might give him some kind of an answer. Finally, he straightened. You know, it could be a rock fall along the shore," he said. "Sound bends out here. Don't let it get in your heads. We'll start hauling the first net in a minute." Well, his voice carried the weight of authority, the same as always, but his hand was locked tight on the rail. In the lantern glow, I could see his knuckles bleached white. After that, the noise either faded or got swallowed by the rest of the night. We tried to slip back into the pattern. Alistair gave the signal and the engine came alive again, low and steady, pushing the Maori Bay back toward the first marker. As we closed in on the float, something else pulled our focus. The water around it was wrong. The buoy didn't bob or drift the way it should. No, it rotated slowly, dragged in a lazy circle by something we couldn't see. The surface around it bulged outward in a wide ring, like pressure pushing up from below instead of waves coming down from the wind. "It's, current again," Alistair said, too fast. No one else had spoken. "Aye, that trench messes with things." We eased alongside, and Stuart snagged the line with the hook and started pulling it in, hand over hand, bracing for the usual dead weight of fish and wet mesh. But instead, the rope snapped tight and refused to move. His shoulders locked. "It's caught," he said. "Something solid." "Rock shelf, maybe," Alistair replied. "Give it a hard pull. Don't tear it." Stuart planted his boots and leaned back. Well, the line crept in a foot, maybe two, and then froze again. The boat edged toward the spot where the net should have been. Around us, the water rolled in a slow, wide swell that had nothing to do with the wind. This isn't right," Stuart muttered. "It's not sharp, it's heavy, and it's moving." Alistair stepped in beside him, and together they hauled. I joined in, grabbing the rope behind them. The line was icy through my gloves, slick with water, but under that something else pulsed. Vibration running through the fibers, a deep, steady tremor that rose and fell, setting my teeth on edge. "Do you feel that?" I said. But before anyone answered, the resistance vanished. The rope went limp in our hands. We staggered as it came free all at once, loose and useless. "Right, easy," Alistair snapped. "Let it out slow." We steadied ourselves and hauled again, controlled this time. When the net finally broke the surface, it came up light. A handful of small fish flopped weakly near the top. The rest was gone. The lower half of the net had been torn away. Not snagged, not cut, ripped. The remaining edges hung in ugly strands, twisted and stretched. Water streamed off the ruin as we stared at it in the lantern's sick glow. The loch lay calm around us, offering nothing back. "Could be a big log," Alistair said. "Driftwood from upstream. We'll patch it later." The words were there, but the belief wasn't. I'd seen nets ruined by debris before, and this wasn't that. The gap was wide, forced open. The strands looked pulled apart, not sliced by stone. Whatever did this had weight and give. Duncan found his voice again. "A log that swims and tugs back," he said. "We should head in, talk this over with a bottle, not loiter out here." Enough," Alistair said. "We're not turning back with scraps and one torn net. We'll check the rest, then decide." Stuart didn't argue, just kept staring at the damage, his brow knotted tight. We hauled the ruined net aboard and stowed it. As we moved toward the next marker, a pressure settled behind my ribs that had nothing to do with the cold. And just like that, the loch no longer felt like a place to work. Part 2. Old stories crept into my mind, tales I'd heard as a boy. Men in the pub talking about long shapes under the surface, humps rising and sinking, wakes with no boat to claim them. I'd always written them off as winter talk, superstition from hungry years. Now those stories sat closer. They were heavy and unwelcome. We reached the second net. Its marker float rested still, the water around it undisturbed. No rings, no pull, just quiet. In the thin lantern light, the surface looked harmless enough, just water doing what water always does. See, Alistair said under his breath. "The first one was bad luck. We haul this in, and it'll be clean." We took up the second line. Well, the weight came on steady and familiar. No fight, no drag. As the net climbed, scales flashed silver in the yellow glow. I felt my shoulders drop with relief. That annoyed me. I'd always counted myself level-headed. Still, an intact net was enough to calm me down. We dumped the catch into the wooden bin. Fish slapped and thudded against the boards, alive and real. This was the point of the night. This should have set us right. But it didn't. The torn net and that strange hum in the rope stayed with me, hovering just behind every thought. "Right, we'll check the last two," Alistair said. "If anything like that happens again, we head in. No one's saying I put the Marty Big at risk for nothing." That gave me pause. Alistair didn't back down easily. The fact he said it at all meant the first net had gotten under his skin more than he let on. We fired the engine and followed the trench, and the mist came back, not as one solid band this time, but in loose strips sliding low over the surface. They didn't block the waves, but they blurred the edge where water ended and air began. The lantern light bounced off them, but it was flattening the distance and warping depth. Duncan went quiet. He stood near the stern, one hand on the rail, staring back at the black trail we'd already crossed. What is it?" I asked. He took a second before answering. "I keep thinking there's something in our wake," he said. "A long sheep, just under the surface. When I look straight at it, though, it's gone." "Dark plays tricks," I said. "I know tricks," he said. "This isn't that." I let it drop. I didn't want him filling in the details. My head was already doing a good enough job of that. The third net sat near a tight bend where the hills leaned in close. As we approached, the cold sharpened. It wasn't just chilly. No, this was the kind that cuts through layers and settles in your bones. No one said anything, but I saw Stuart rubbing his arms, and Alistair kept scanning the water like he was searching for something he couldn't quite name. The marker float bobbed steady at first glance. Then I noticed it riding lower than it should, dragged down by more weight than fish alone could manage. The water around it didn't chop or slap. It turned slowly like something rolling deep beneath. "Easy," Alistair said. "No quick moves." We slid alongside. Stuart snagged the line, but the moment he pulled, his shoulders snapped back. That's not fish," he said. Duncan moved in behind him, gripping the rope, and together they hauled. The net lifted, but barely. An inch, maybe. The line shuddered under our hands, not in the frantic jerk of snagged mesh, but in a steady, controlled pulse. "Hey, let it go," Alistair said. "Don't load the line." Stuart nodded, but before he could ease off, the rope jumped. A sudden downward yank, strong and purposeful. He staggered and had to spread his feet to stay upright. Something's pulling it," he said. Cut it," Duncan breathed. But Alistair shook his head. Not yet. We don't lose gear unless we have to. Just ease it, slow." We tried again, as careful as surgeons. The line crept up another inch, vibrating in our grip. And then it locked solid. The rope went stiff, dead, as if it were tied straight into something massive and unmoving in the dark below. The deck started to hum under our boots. A blunt snap rolled up through the hull. Nothing like the earlier knocks. No, this one felt close and solid. "Hey, that's it," Alistair said. "Let it go. Let it rest." Stuart fed the rope through his gloves until the float drifted free beside us again. The water around it settled, smoothed over like nothing had happened. But the tension didn't. "There's something down there," Duncan said quietly. "Something that doesn't care what it's dragging." "Right, we'll come back in daylight," Alistair said. "I'm not risking the Marty Big for a weighted net in pitch dark." He kicked the engine over before anyone could push back. The sound was a relief. A machine you could trust, something that obeyed rules in a night that didn't. As we turned toward the last net, the boat shifted again, not a lurch, worse than that. A slow tilt, like the water itself was leaning into us from underneath. It righted itself after a few seconds, but my gut stayed knotted. We pressed on. The hills pinched tighter. This stretch of the loch was deep, blacker than anything I'd ever seen. The lantern barely touched the surface. I leaned out once, searching for any hint of movement, but the light died fast, swallowed whole. God, the depth felt endless. And then something hit the water behind us. Well, not a splash you could shrug off. It sounded like weight, like mass slamming down hard. We all turned. Ripples rolled out in a wide circle, catching the lantern glow as it swung. God, what was that? I asked. Yeah, no reason to think it's anything out of the ordinary, Alistair replied, but his voice didn't back him up. He stared at the water longer than he should have, and the ripples kept spreading, so wide, strong. Nothing with wings or fins made a mark like that. Whatever had surfaced had already gone under again. Duncan stepped closer to me. I know this loch, he murmured. Well, not like you do, but enough to say that wasn't right. Well, I didn't argue. I couldn't. We neared the fourth net and saw the float jerking in short, violent snaps. Dip, rise, dip again. Each movement sharp, like something below was testing the line in bursts. Leave it, Stuart said flatly. We know how this ends. We check it, Alistair said. No guessing. He eased the Mari Beg alongside. The water around the float wasn't circling now. It was chopping, breaking into jagged little waves despite the weak wind. The surface looked fractured, motion going every direction at once. Alistair hooked the float himself. His hands were steady, but his shoulders were locked tight. When he pulled, the rope snapped hard, almost tearing free. Careful, Stuart said, but Alistair ignored him. He braced and hauled again. The line shivered, not wildly, but with purpose, like something below was gauging us. Alistair, I started. The tension vanished. The rope went dead. Alistair staggered back, barely catching the tiller. I hauled the line in fast, not wanting to give whatever was down there time to reset. When the net broke the surface, my breath stopped. Half of it was destroyed. Not ripped like the first one, no. This was worse. Wide gashes tore through multiple layers. Long strips of mesh hung shredded and limp. The damage was deep and brutal. And there wasn't a single fish in it. Stuart lifted a section. Water streamed through the tatters. No rock does this. No log either, Duncan said. Alistair didn't answer. He stood rigid, staring at the ruin like he was holding himself together by force. We go back, Stuart said. No. Alistair just kept staring. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat. Aye, we go. He didn't explain, he didn't have to. We all knew. Whatever lived in the loch had touched our nets on purpose. Alistair turned the Mari Beg toward home, and as the boat swung around, I felt a pressure in the air. Not strong, but unmistakable. That feeling you get before a storm breaks. Only the storm never came. The sky stayed sealed, the wind dropped, and behind us the loch opened into a widening trail of black water. We ran for minutes without a word, each of us locked onto a different slice of the loch, pretending that was enough to keep control. None of us said it out loud, but we were all thinking the same thing. Something had clocked our work tonight, and it hadn't let go. I didn't want to see it. Still, when I looked back, I caught it, far off in our wake, a wide shape sliding just under the surface, low, dark, barely more than a suggestion, but it was long. God, so long, longer than anything I'd ever seen in fresh water. I blinked, and it folded back under the waves like it had never been there. I kept my mouth shut. There was no point. The others could feel it too. You could sense it in the water, in the way the night pressed closer. The feeling of being, noticed. The engine held its steady pulse as we pushed toward the broader stretch of the loch. Cold hung in the air. Thin ribbons of mist dragged themselves across the surface. The hills had closed in until they were just black walls on either side of us. I tried to anchor myself to the motor's hum, to the slap of water against the hull, but every sound only carved out the silence around it, and that silence felt vast, waiting, like it was holding the space for something to speak. Duncan drifted back toward the stern. He kept checking the wake, his face pulled tight. Normally he'd be talking non-stop, filling the dark with his noise. Now he hadn't said a word since we'd turned for home. God, he looked hollowed out, like the loch had reached up and taken something directly from him. Stuart stood near the bow, one hand locked on the rail. He leaned forward, his eyes fixed ahead. He'd grown up on the same stories we all had, things moving in Scottish waters, but he'd never been one to repeat them. The way he stared into the dark told me he was replaying every tale he'd ever laughed off. All the while, Alistair stayed at the tiller, both hands set. He didn't look at us. He didn't scan the water. His eyes were pinned to a point somewhere ahead, steering the Marty Beg toward it like the rest of the world had dropped away. But it wasn't calm. It was the stillness of someone holding himself together by force. About 10 minutes into the run, the loch changed again. The waves stopped lining up neatly, and instead wide sections of water began to rise and sink in a slower rhythm, heavy and deliberate. Well, the surface never broke, but the movement had weight to it, too much for any of us to ignore. Alistair eased the throttle. "Hold steady," he said, mostly to himself. We crossed one of those lifted patches, and the boat rose slightly and then settled. The push didn't come from wind. It came from below. I could feel it through the soles of my boots. "We need to get off this trench," Stuart said quietly. "Shallower water. It won't follow us as easy." If we cut across now, we risk rocks," Alistair said. "We stay on the safe line until it opens up." He sounded firm, but again the certainty wasn't there. Another bulge rolled up ahead of us, spreading wide, lifting the surface before sinking back down. The wind didn't shift, no current changed. It was the same movement we'd felt near the nets. "Now that's no current," Duncan said. "No, something's pacing us." No one argued. The next rise came closer, maybe 20 meters out. We passed over it, and this time the boat rocked hard. Loose gear skidded and clattered across the deck. I swallowed and forced my breathing to slow. Told myself this was just the loch, deep, old, the kind of place that breeds stories. But the timing of it ruined that thought. God, the strength, the way it stayed with us. When the next swell lifted, something else came with it. A low vibration through the hull. Not just sound, it was pressure. It slid into my chest and stayed there. "Alistair," I said, "how long until we hit the white stretch?" 10 minutes, he said. "Keep watching." I turned back again. The lantern barely pushed into the dark before it gave up. For a few seconds, nothing moved. And then, right at the edge of the light, the water shoved outward, slowly, powerfully, as if struck from below. The ring spread wider than any splash we'd seen that night. "I saw it," Duncan said under his breath. "Something's going up and down. It's riding our wake." My throat cinched tight. "Look, we don't know that." "Aye, we do," he said back, flat and certain. Stuart spoke without looking around. "Whatever it is, it's been probing us, ripping nets, leaning on the lines. God, now it's closing the gap." No one asked how he knew. The proof was written all over the water in the way the surface kept rearranging itself around us. As we pushed into the wider stretch of the loch, the hills loosened their grip, and the cold sharpened. The wind fell away to almost nothing, The engine grew louder by comparison, the only reliable sound left. Then everything else died. Well, not the engine, the lock. The water smoothed out. No swells, no pressure, no vibration. Even the thin mist ahead thinned and scattered. For a heartbeat, the place felt normal again. "It's gone," I whispered, but Alistair shook his head. No. It's waiting." Duncan opened his mouth to answer, and then something slammed into the underside of the boat. Part 3. Oh, this wasn't a bump, it was a proper hit. The hull shuddered violently, knocking us off balance. I grabbed the rail with both hands. Stuart stumbled forward and caught the bow. Duncan dropped to one knee. A deep, ugly impact rang through the timbers, followed by ripples exploding outward on both sides. Alistair wrestled the tiller. "Hey, hold on." Another blow came, angled up this time. A heavy thud rolled through the deck. The Marty bag tipped hard, then crashed back down, throwing icy water across us. "Come on, full throttle," Stuart shouted. Alistair shoved it forward. The engine roared, rattling the boat as we lunged ahead. For a split second, it felt like escape. Then the water behind us swelled again. Closer now. The dark mass rose under the surface. It didn't break through, but it warped everything above it, bending the water like thin metal. My pulse hammered in my ears. "Alistair," I yelled. "It's coming up." "It won't keep up in open water," he shouted back. "Everyone stay upright." But he was wrong. Something broke the surface behind us. Only for a second, but long enough. A smooth, dark mound rolled up, broad and unmistakable. Part of a long body or neck lifted and then slid back under. The wake it threw raced toward us. Duncan sucked in air. Now that is no log. The next surge hit the stern, lifting it clean for a moment. The engine screamed under the strain, and the force behind us was enormous. Stuart looked at me, his face drained pale in the lantern glow. "God, it's matching our speed. That's not any animal I know." I couldn't answer. My voice was gone, swallowed by a mix of fear and disbelief. Most of it stayed submerged, moving with intent. The next time it surfaced, it'd be closer. Then the next time, it might come all the way out. "Alistair," I said, forcing my words out. "We can't outrun something that owns this depth." His jaw locked, but he didn't look back. "Then we have to hope it decides we're not worth the work." But it didn't. The water behind us bulged again, higher this time, and it didn't sink back. A long shape moved beneath the surface, pushing the lock upward in a slow, rising arc that kept climbing. The lantern caught flashes of smooth, dark skin sliding under the waves. Well, we couldn't see all of it. We didn't need to. It was far bigger than anything meant to live in fresh water. Alistair tightened his grip. "Hold steady. Don't shift." Well, his order barely mattered. None of us could move if we wanted to. I stood frozen, my hands locked on the rail, staring at the rising wall of water behind us. And a narrow section of neck broke the surface. It rose only a little, but it stopped my thoughts cold. Dark, slick skin, water streaming off it in thin lines. A small head followed, lifting just enough for us to see its shape. Rounded, blunt snout, eyes dark as holes, reflecting nothing. They didn't shine, they swallowed the light. The gaze felt empty, fixed. The neck held there for 2, maybe 3 seconds, then it slid back under. The wake it left rolled toward us, wide and crushing. Duncan backed away from the stern until he hit the steps down to the cabin. "God, it saw us," he said. "It looked right at us." Again, no one argued. We all had seen it. Stuart stepped in beside Alistair, not taking the helm, just bracing him. "Keep speed even," he said. Don't let it shove us sideways." Alistair gave a short nod, his jaw locked hard enough to crack teeth. "If it hits the hull again, get to the center. No one goes in the water." The thought of that water closed my throat. I'd dealt with storms, freezing spray, decks pitching under my boots. That was all survivable. Falling in with that thing below us felt like a death sentence already signed. The next movement didn't come from behind. It came off the port side. A long dark rise broke the surface, not bursting up but easing out, smooth and controlled. It ran at a slight angle toward our path, holding position like it knew exactly where we were going. "That's its back," Stuart said. "God, it's hurting us." I wanted to argue. I wanted to believe it was blind movement, instinct, coincidence. But the shape stayed with us, adjusting in small, precise shifts, matching our speed, matching our line. Then it sank again, dragging the water inward after it, like the loch itself was bowing under its weight. The engine screamed at full throttle. Alistair pushed it as far as he dared. The bow chewed through the water, spray flinging out into the dark. "Right, deeper water," Alistair muttered, "giving us room." "God, we're already deep," I said, but he didn't answer. Ahead the loch pinched in, not much but enough. The slopes leaned closer, they were dark and heavy, and the channel narrowed, and the water there felt stronger, alive somehow, like something breathing around us. We went quiet. All of us watched both sides, waiting for the next sign, but the surface stayed steady. No ripples, no bulges. Then the boat slowed. Not a stop, no, much worse. Forward motion dragged like we were pushing through thick mud. The engine's strain climbed, and the stern dipped slightly as if something below had taken hold. Alistair spread his feet. "Oh, that can't happen. No nets down. Nothing to foul us. Check the rudder line." Stuart didn't move. His eyes were locked on the water behind us. "It's not the rudder." The stern dipped again, deeper this time. The lantern swung, throwing warped shadows across our faces. "It's right under us," Duncan said. I leaned over the side, staring into nothing. The dark swallowed everything. The only proof was the resistance, the way the Marty Bay fought for every meter. Then the water behind us exploded. A massive surge tore upward, spilling the surface, and a rounded head rose, higher than before. A long neck followed, lifting meters clear. Water streamed off its skin in sheets, and it came up enough this time for us to see its upper body, thick, solid, and built for force. And those eyes found us again. Alistair crushed the tiller in his hands until the wood groaned. "Go on, don't stop," he said. His voice held, but only just. The creature dipped its head and slid closer. Its weight caught the stern and lifted it. The bow pitched down, nose angling toward the water. I stepped back without thinking, my heart slamming, my breath coming apart in my chest. But it didn't strike. Instead, it went under. The hull shuddered as something enormous passed beneath us. The vibration ran up through the deck and into my legs like an electric charge. "Brace!" Stuart yelled. The stern slammed back down just as the bow lifted. The Marty Bay buckled hard, but Alistair held her straight. Duncan flattened himself against the cabin door. "God, it's toying with us," he said. "It could rip us open if it wanted." Alistair didn't deny it. When he spoke, his calm was unsettling. "Right, there's a shallow shelf ahead. If we clear the narrow, it won't be able to surface there." My mouth went dry. "And if it hits us before then?" "We keep moving," Alistair said. No pause, no doubt. Another swell rose off starboard, bigger than the rest. The creature surfaced again, but not fully, but enough to show a long curve of its back, then the start of a second hump before it slipped under. The pull from it dragged us offline. Correct, Stuart said, shifting his weight with Alistair. Oh, the engine groaned, and the boat straightened. Then it surfaced again, closer than ever. God, the head rose just off the stern, close enough that the lantern washed its skin in yellow light. Water poured down its neck in streams, and the eyes all the time stayed on us. Wasn't furious, wasn't confused, just aware. Whatever it wasn't running on hunger or blind instinct. There was thought behind it, direction. It moved like it had a plan. The creature slipped under again, the surface sealing over it without so much as a splash. Alistair blew air through clenched teeth. God, it's steering us. It's driving us up the log. No, Stuart said. It's wearing us down. Well, that word landed heavy in my gut. The hills began to pull back as we approached the shelf Alistair had talked about. The walls weren't pressing so close now, and the mist ahead thinned to a dull haze. The engine kept pushing, but the Marty Beg finally responded. A little bit lighter, a little freer. The stern rose. Whatever had been dragging us had eased off. Come on, we're almost there, Alistair said. Keep her true. We didn't make it. The water ahead split and the creature came up dead in our path. The neck rose first, then the head, blocking the channel like a living barrier. It didn't thrash or roar. It was just there, dark and still. Water streamed down its skin in narrow lines, and its eyes once again locked onto us, unblinking in the lantern glow. Oh, the engine fought, but the boat slowed anyway, as if the space itself had thickened around us. Alistair backed off the throttle just enough to avoid ramming it. Hold steady, he said, but all the confidence was gone. We drifted closer. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. No words that could reach something that had owned this loch long before any of us had names for it. The creature dipped its head slightly then. A deep movement passed under the surface, like breath moving through water instead of air. Then, slowly and deliberately, it sank. The neck went last, sliding under in one smooth, controlled descent. Then for a moment, the water went still. Our path had opened. Well, Alistair didn't hesitate. Go! He shoved the throttle forward. Now! The Marty Beg lunged ahead, cutting through the spot where the creature had been seconds before. I looked down as we crossed it. The depth below was pure black, endless. Anything could have been down there, pacing us without ever showing itself. Now the loch widened again. Somewhere ahead lay the shelf, shallower than the trench, but still deep enough to hide something that knew these waters better than we ever would. For a full minute, nothing happened. No swells, no shapes. Even the mist thinned until the air felt cleaner. Duncan let out a breath that shook. Is it gone? No, Stuart said. It's waiting for us to feel safe. Alistair glanced back. Watch the water, all of you. I stared at our wake, half expecting the head to rise again, but the water stayed calm. The waves looked normal, small and harmless. The quiet got gradually heavier. Minutes dragged by. The Marty Beg made good speed through the wider stretch. The fear in my chest didn't fade, but it shifted, hardened into anticipation, into waiting. I turned toward the starboard, scanning the surface. That's when I saw it. Out near the edge of the lantern's reach, a long dark shape moved alongside us. It wasn't rushing, wasn't surfacing, just gliding. Its outline slipped in and out of faint ripples and extended back, the hint of a second ridge behind it. Silent all the while. It's still with us, I said. Stuart didn't turn. Of course it is. Alistair locked his jaw and kept us moving. We couldn't outrun something that moved through this loch like it belonged to it. All we had was the hope it might lose interest. But that hope died when the shadow shifted, and it angled inward. "Alistair," I said, "it's closing again." He didn't reply. He set his stance and adjusted the tiller. The shadow accelerated. Ripples spread outward from it. It cut toward our path in a clean, controlled line, and the water behind it lifted in a low swell. Duncan backed away from the rail. "God, it's going to hit us." Stuart stayed planted at the bow, coiled and ready. "Right, hold center when it does." But it didn't strike. No, it veered again, slight at first, then sharp. It passed beneath the bow from starboard to port. The water humped up as it went under, lifting the front of the boat just enough to make my stomach drop. And then it kept moving, circling. "God, it's boxing us in," I said. Alistair nodded once, stiff and grim. The creature completed its silent arc and slid back behind us, gone from sight, but not really gone at all. Ahead, the water started to glow. Not bright, just a thin, ghostly streak skimming the surface of the loch. The first real change in the sky all night. The cloud cover had slipped, just barely, and a narrow cut of moonlight leaked through. Weak stuff, but enough. The hills snapped into harder shapes, jagged and close, like they'd been waiting for us to notice them. "Right, we're getting into the shallows," Alistair said. His voice was calmer, but still tight. "Keep it straight." And the Maori Baig kept pushing on. Part 4. Oh, my hands burned from clamping the rail too hard. I couldn't make myself loosen my grip. Stuart shifted his stance, sliding one foot back as the boat rolled under him. Duncan hovered near the cabin door, coiled and ready, like he expected to be thrown through it at any second. We all watched the water. We waited for it to break again, for a ripple, a rise, a head tearing free of the surface. Nothing. 5 long minutes dragged by. The loch went flat and still, smooth as glass. "We might be past it," Stuart said, but he didn't believe his own words. "Not yet," Alistair shot back. "Not till we hit the shore." Behind us the water stayed dead calm. The faint moonlight made everything clearer now. If something big was tracking us, we'd see it. But we saw nothing. "Maybe it dropped back into deeper water," Duncan said. His voice sounded stretched thin, like it might snap at any moment. "Or it's right under us," Stuart added. Cold crawled up my spine. I leaned over the side again, searching the black below. Well, the water gave nothing away. The engine kept its steady hum, and ahead the mist peeled back in long, trailing ribbons. The loch opened wider, giving us room to breathe. "Come on, almost through," Alistair said, and for a heartbeat I believed him. Then the Maori Baig buckled sideways, like it had been kicked by something enormous. The hit didn't come from below, though. It smashed into the starboard side, hard, sudden, and deliberate. The rail slammed into my ribs as I clung to it, pain flashing white-hot. The whole boat skidded sideways then, tipping so far I thought it was going to roll, before crashing back down with a brutal splash. Duncan flew into the cabin door, the breath knocked clean out of him. Stuart dropped to one knee, then hauled himself upright. Alistair nearly lost the tiller, his fingers slipping before he wrestled it back under control. "What the hell was that?" I yelled. The answer came as another blow, this time from the port side, a driving, purposeful impact. The boat lurched again, worse than before. "God, it's ramming us," Stuart said. "It's trying to throw us off." Alistair strained against the tiller again. "Right, brace. Come on, move with it." A third hit slammed low along the hull, shoving us into a shallow turn. The engine whined under the pressure. The Maori Baig fought back, but the creature struck again, correcting the angle like it knew exactly what it was doing. This was not blind fury, it was calculated. "Right, get to the center," Stuart shouted. Duncan moved first, stumbling across the deck, and I followed, grabbing at ropes and rails as the boat pitched again. The fourth impact was monstrous, enough to lift the stern clear of the water. The Maribeg came down hard, the sound of splitting wood echoing through the lock. "It's trying to roll us," I said. "No," Stuart replied. "It's trying to pull us apart." The next strike hit the bow, sharper this time, louder. Alistair lost his grip and staggered as the boat spun violently. And then the water broke. It rose beside us at the starboard beam, close enough to feel the displacement. The head came first, sliding up with terrifying control. And then the neck, that long, thick, impossibly strong neck, uncoiling as it lifted higher, until its entire upper body cleared the surface. The water streamed down its hide in sheets. It didn't roar. It didn't make a sound. It just looked at us. In that silence, its size became impossible to ignore. The rest of it stayed hidden beneath the surface, but we could feel it. Weight, depth, mass. Something vast enough to make our boat feel like driftwood. Alistair froze. Stuart stood his ground, his eyes wide but unblinking. Duncan backed away until he hit the mast, pressing himself against it like he could vanish into the woods. I couldn't breathe. The creature dipped its head, its neck bending slightly, and it paused, suspended there as if choosing. Then it moved. It surged forward in one clean, final motion. The neck swept ahead, shoving a wall of water straight at us. The bow plunged into the rising surge, and freezing spray detonated across the deck. I stumbled back, grabbing the nearest handhold as the lantern whipped wildly overhead. The boat pitched forward, timber groaning under the strain. Alistair locked both hands on the tiller. "Oh, hold on." The creature didn't slam the hull this time. It slipped past our starboard side instead, its bulk buried under the surface. The water it displaced rolled beneath us in ugly pulses, heaving the Maribeg up and dropping her back down out of rhythm. Another swell followed, worse than the last, snapping the deck at our feet. Stuart locked himself in near the bow. "It's crossing right in front of us." "Well, then we cut around it," Alistair said, yanking the tiller over. The Maribeg turned, but the lock boxed us in. It was tight and unforgiving. There was no room to run. To port, a massive ripple spread outward, wide and clean and deliberate. It moved in step with the disturbance on starboard. "It's circling us now," I said. Stuart didn't bother answering. The water told the story on its own. The creature had surged past us, then curved back in a wide, patient arc, closing the loop. The surface quivered with its movement, not violent, not frantic, just heavy and certain. The lock itself felt like it was closing its jaws. Alistair steadied the throttle. "Straight through. Come on, hold on." He aimed us at the narrow break between the two rising arcs in the water. It wasn't much, just a few meters of uneasy calm. Miss it by a fraction, and we'd drive straight into the thing if it chose to rise. The Maribeg pressed forward. Well, I felt the weight of that choice settle in my gut. Either we broke free, or we handed ourselves over to it. As we closed in, the water swelled. A dark section of its body rose just under the surface beside us, broad, endless, moving with us like it was tethered to us. Moonlit slid across its skin, revealing a slick, muscular curve gliding through the lock. "Alistair!" I shouted. I see it!" Before he could correct, the creature lifted. For a heartbeat, the long curve of its back broke the surface. And that was enough. Our boat looked like nothing against it. Wooden bolts beside something built to crush and drown. But it didn't hit us. It dropped away again and slid ahead, forcing the water up into a rolling wall. Alistair was forced to turn hard. The Maribeg lurched, missing the creature's submerged mass by just a breath. The hull shuddered as pressure slammed against it from below. It's pushing us offline, Stuart said, gripping the rail away from the shelf. Alistair didn't argue. He didn't need to. Whatever this thing was, it knew exactly how to move the water, how to steer us without ever touching us. We clawed back a little speed, but the loch stayed agitated. Waves rose and fell out of sequence, each one a hint of something massive shifting beneath us. I scanned the surface, waiting for another breach. Duncan pointed to the stern. I turned just in time to see a long, dark shape, sliding just below the surface behind us now. It followed at an easy pace, matching our speed, like it could do this all night. "It's not letting us go," I said. Alistair leaned into the engine. "We don't stop, we don't slow. If it wants to turn us again, it'll have to show itself." Stuart wiped water from his eyes. "And then what?" Alistair didn't answer. The swell behind us grew, rolling forward like a closing fist. It hit the stern and lifted it hard. The Marty Beg pitched again, the bow dipping as icy water poured across the deck and soaked my boots. "Balance!" Stuart yelled. We shifted without thinking. Alistair corrected with the tiller. The boat leveled out, barely, but the wake stayed tight on us. And then the creature rose again, right beside us. Its long neck broke the surface smoothly, almost gently. The head followed, water streaming off it in sheets. One dark eye turned toward us, deep and empty, fixing us in place. And it drifted alongside the Marty Beg, not attacking, just keeping pace and watching. The head edged closer, and I stepped back. Duncan flattened himself against the cabin wall, eyes blown wide. Stuart held his ground, breathing fast through his nose. The creature lowered its head until it hovered just above the surface. Its gaze moved from one of us to the next, slowly and deliberately. Well, there was nothing in it I could recognize. No rage, no curiosity, just awareness. Then it turned away. It slid forward, gliding ahead of us. The next sank beneath the surface only until the last curve showed, and then that too disappeared. The water smoothed out, pretending nothing had been there at all. We stared at the settling surface. "What's it doing?" I asked. "Leading us," Stuart replied, "or driving us." Alistair shoved the throttle further forward. "We follow nothing," he said. "We go home." But the loch pushed back. The second we crossed the spot where the creature had gone under, the water rose into a long, deliberate ridge straight across our path. Not solid, not something you could point to, but engineered all the same. A swell shaped by intent. And the Marty Beg slammed into it, throwing us off our feet. The impact rattled teeth and bones alike. The ridge bled our speed away. Another surge followed, nudging the bow to starboard. Before Alistair could correct, a matching swell hit from port, boxing us in. "Oh God, it's hurting us again," I said. "Penning us," Alistair muttered, fury grinding under the words. The tiller shook in his hands. "Oh, no, nothing tells my boat where to go." The water behind us shivered. A massive hump broke the surface, smooth, black, and unmistakable, then vanished again like it had never even been there. "Oh, that was his back," Duncan breathed. "It's behind us." None of us spoke. We didn't dare. And the water churned. Something heavy passed right beneath us, deep enough to flex the hull and shudder the deck, and then it rose again, right in front of us. This time there was no space, no warning. The long neck surged straight up out of the loch, towering over the bow. Water sheeted down its length, hammering the deck. Its head lowered toward us, cutting off everything ahead, a living wall of muscle and shadow. Alistair hauled the throttle back, and the Marty Beg slowed fast, drifting to a stop just meters from the creature. It stayed there, silent. We stared up at it, frozen in fear tangled with awe, the sick certainty that none of our stories or charts or half-remembered warnings had prepared us for this. The loch we thought we knew was gone. "It wants us to stop," Stuart said, barely louder than a breath. The creature lowered its head further. One dark eye locked onto Alistair at the tiller. The air itself felt crushed. It leaned closer. Alistair didn't move. Seconds dragged, and then the creature shifted its head, not turning away completely, just enough to break the stare. It held that angle, considering us, measuring. Then it slid backward and down, vanishing beneath the surface without so much as a ripple. And the loch went still. For the first time in hours, the water moved the way water was supposed to. The mist thinned, even the cold eased its grip. Alistair looked at each of us. "We go," he said. "Now." He pushed the throttle, and the Marty Beg moved on. The creature didn't come back. Not across the open stretch, not near the shallows, not when the hills spread wider and the village lights crept back into view beyond the dark slopes. Only when the water grew too shallow for something that vast to follow did Alistair finally loosen his grip and breathe. We didn't speak until the jetty appeared. And then Stuart turned to me. "We, saw it," he said. "All of us." We did," I said. Duncan shook his head, still drained of colour. "Well, I don't understand why it let us leave." Alistair cut the engine. The Marty Beg drifted the rest of the way on momentum. "It was guarding something," he said, "or warning us. Either way, we don't go back to that trench, ever." We moored the boat without a word. All the time the village slept on, unaware. No one saw us step onto the jetty, soaked and shaking. As we headed toward the houses, I looked back at the loch. The surface lay calm, no shadows, no ripples. But I knew something waited beneath it, something that had been there long before us, and would still be there long after we were gone. Well, my dear friends, I have to say when I saw the title of that one, I'm thinking, how are you going to make this suspenseful? How are you going to make this a surprise? Everybody knows the Loch Ness Monster. How is this going to play out in a way that's going to be a lot of fun? And that, I guess, the story is the answer to that. Absolute swashbuckling fun all the way. Hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. And it's rare that you get to read one and you're just like, yeah, come on, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Well, that was one of those, definitely for me. So, thoughts, feelings, anything else you want to say in the comment section below the video. And as always, I will do my best to join in the discussion. Forgot to do a podcast yesterday, basically, so there will be one tomorrow and probably one at the weekend as well over on my second channel and anywhere you care to get your podcasts. But that is definitely enough for me for one evening. Back again very, very soon, my dear friends. Till the next time, remember, it's just a story and you all sleep well, yeah? Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.